So, you clicked on a link and you want to build some bookshelves. Oh, you come to the right spot. These came about because I built these built-ins a few years ago. And I always intended to put bookshelves on both sides. Well, really the other side is basically a coat rack and a shoe rack. We've had the shoe rack there forever. And I wanted to expand on that, build in the space. We already had the punch out. But let me first go over a few things that I would consider mission critical before you start a project like this. Let's dive in.
If you feel like you've seen this section before, you probably have, in short form. Don't blame a guy for trying to reuse some content. So you're about to build some bookshelves. Cool. Here's the things that I would say that are mission critical to the success for your project. 1. Build yourself a crosscut sled. You need one. 2. Dado blade set. And for that dado blade set, you're gonna need a 0 clearance. 4. Jig for drilling out bookshelf pinholes. And lastly, 5. Get yourself a sprayer. Nice one. Whatever you can afford. Yes, you can get away and work around these issues without these things. But if you want to save some time and up your game, bite the bullet and buy these things. Trust me. Hope this helps. And why don't you help me out by clicking that subscribe button below. Making the cuts. Onto the bookshelf itself, you're essentially just building a box. Look at the ones that you get from the store. They have at least 2 horizontal braces, probably butt jointed at the top and the bottom, with a thin, probably cardboard backing just to keep everything from tilting around. Trying to improve on this design, I doubled that, and instead of using a butt joint, I use a dado joint. My backing will be set via a rabbit joint. Behind the backing, I'll also have some more cross bracing that I'm able to mount things to and mount that whole unit to the wall. This is the reason that you'll see my 2 inner dado shelves being so spread apart. Downside to this is that most intersection might bow on you. Since I'll be using ply, I'll also be covering each of the bookshelves with a face frame. This adds to the complexity of the design, and there are a ton of details here that you'll have to consider when you get into it. Dattos and Rabbits. I put in 4 dados. The top one is set right at the very top and is primarily cosmetic due to the ceiling braces that I had to work around. I added a second dado about 12 inches down, and really this is my supportive part for all the shelving. I also made it line up with that top window part, so everything is just a nice clean line. The dado at the bottom is set 2.5 inches in. This was the width of my face frame, so think ahead about the offset for your bottom shelf. If you set your shelving at the very top and the very bottom, the whole thing is going to have a tendency to tilt, and it's just going to be a gigantic pain to assemble. The second from the bottom dado lines up with the rest of my storage built in. The hope here is that this whole thing's just gonna come together perfectly square and mount in the space the first time. And of course, the walls are expected to be square and plumb. Easy, right? My rabbit screw up. I like to show my screw ups in my videos, so maybe you can learn from my mistakes. When I was running my rabbit cuts for the back, I ran it on the front side. Stupid me. Measurements were good. I just had flipped my piece, the front versus the back. I'm painting this project, so it's not the end of the world. What I have to do now is I have to get a filler piece, glue it in, and then hide that crack. Another silver lining, or workaround, is that this part is going to be largely hidden from the face frame. I'll get to that part in another video. To fill the gap of the cut, I just trimmed a scrap piece. The cut is a 1/2 inch deep and I glued it into place. Once dry, I use a Japanese flush cut saw to flatten everything out, and a little sanding will take care of the rest. Once everything is cut and sanded, I still have a little gap that I need to fill. So here, I'll make some sawdust and polyurethane slurry, and I'll just bash that in, fill the gaps wherever I need, and once again, I wait for it to dry, and a little bit more sanding, and that crack is basically gonna just disappear. The back. On the back, I added some bracing. Just a place that I can mount this to the wall and keep everything together with some pocket holes. This is exactly what the pocket jig is used for. So check out my video on the overview of the Craig pocket tool if you wish. If you don't have a pocket jig, you're missing out. These are wonderful and will save you a ton of time. In fact, I probably could have saved myself some more time by using more pocket holes in this project. But I'm a glutton for punishment, so I did the Dattos and Rabbit way. With a number of vices, glue, nail gun, and the help of a neighbor, this actually came together relatively easily. Biggest suggestion I can give you here is to take your time. Double, triple, check your dimensions, and after it's all together, check your dimensions again. Big pieces like this have a tendency to bow and twist. Hopefully, it's within your margin of error. Adding the back piece that's so large, I was expecting more issue than I actually had, but it wasn't too awful, honestly. With such a large gap between my Dattos, the sides that I did want to bow out a bit with a little bit of a vise, or you just take this big piece and you set it on the side and work slowly. You can push in that back piece with relative ease. I did wait to put my back bracing on until the back piece was actually in. I didn't want any pocket screws to be nudging its way into that rabbit track, making it harder for me to slide in that piece. Beam notches. Because life isn't easy, I had to contend with these ceiling beams and notch it out in different locations for each of my bookshelves. I really didn't realize this until after I had put my carcasses together. So I had to cut out an already assembled piece. This part I wouldn't recommend, but here's a little trick to line it all up. Use a stiff piece of cardboard to place, you cut it out, and then you transfer it onto your piece. I did this both for the ceiling beams as well as my electrical outlets. Of course, you can take your measurements from the left and the right and the up and the down, and if you do all of that, you're better than I am. Good luck. Post-mortem. Number 1, having cutouts for the ceiling braces. Yeah, it's kind of a cool element to look at the shelving and say, yeah, I did that. But honestly, it was a gigantic pain in the ass. What I wanted was shelving that went up as high as possible, up to the ceiling, but it still doesn't reach the top of the ceiling. Plus, the top shelf is really unlikely to get used. So yeah, I probably would have done that. I would have maybe just cut right at the bottom of those ceiling braces. Number 2, not buying enough wood. This is a hard one because I am limited on space. I knew that I would need more shelving, but I could have probably cut them down and shoved them in a corner somewhere until I was ready to paint. Number 3, putting the shelving holes where there is a hat and coat rack. I thought that maybe I could convert this bookshelf or hat and coat rack at a later point in time, but in hindsight, I could have put in the shelf holes later. For now, I have both, and looking back at it, kind of looks a little odd. Number 4, using scrap instead of veneering my shelving. I have a problem of never throwing away any scrap, like ever. I think that, I'm gonna need that someday. And that someday is mostly never, and so my pile just grows and grows. I basically had to cover the ply with a scrap by milling it down to size, gluing it and tacking it in place. Then I had to fill the gap and the nail hole, sand everything down. A veneer would have been much easier. But if it makes you feel good that you have finally used up some of that extra scrap wood, then have at it. However, it is a pain. Number 5, not devoting enough time. This is another hard one. I'm embarrassed to say that this build took almost a year and a half. Life has a tendency to get in the way, and there's always something else to do and work on. If I were to do it again, I would say cut it to size, assemble the big stuff, and once you are constantly tripping over this stuff, that's the time when this project really got put into overdrive and I got things done. Money and the materials.
I didn't calculate for things that I already had. Things like the nail gun, glue, vices, what have you. I did put together a Google spreadsheet with the material costs and when I purchased those and all that. That link is down below. I hope this helps you get a sort of guideline of where this project stood. as far as the finances are concerned. And this video is more than long enough already, so in the next video, you can click on, I will cover things like the building of the face frame, painting, installation. Until next time, stay relaxed and keep on living.